Welcome, Alora. I'm going to introduce our special guest. She is the founder and owner of Berry and the Boards. She is driven by her lifelong passion for food and entertaining. With a background in marketing and experiential events, she possesses a keen eye for design, specializing in crafting visually stunning boards for content creation and brand partnerships. Alora also loves sharing her knowledge and expertise with others. Through workshops and online tutorials, she empowers individuals to create their own perfect cheese boards at home, fostering a community of passionate food enthusiasts. Take it away, Alora. We are ready.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you guys so much for joining. If you haven't already, in the top right-hand corner, you can select speaker view, which will allow it to pin both my overhead view and me. So you can see both in your screen, so you can watch what's going on. But thank you guys so much for being here. It's so cool to see all the different places you guys are coming from. My goal today is to teach you some of my favorite tips and tricks to creating a beautiful board so that you can then take those and make your board at home. Maybe you have some groceries with you that you're able to build along with us. If not, you're just getting all that knowledge and saving it for when you're going to make your next cheese board. So if you are building along with me, go ahead and start opening up your cheeses and any of your other ingredients if you have not already. I'm going to kick things off with, obviously, one of the most important parts about your board is the actual board that you are building on. I'm going to be building on this marble. It's actually a cake stand and it's a Lazy Susan, which is wonderful. I love that for presentations especially, but it's also nice when people are trying to get what they want. They can just move the board around. But you can certainly build on a cutting board, any type of board, any flat surface. I even love to do like my kitchen counter, and I'll put a piece of parchment paper down and build right on that if I don't necessarily have the board or the size that I want. And if it's like a holiday, you could cut that parchment paper into a heart or whatever holiday it is or whatever celebration you're doing. It could be so fun to do a little bit of a theme like that and lean into that and maybe do like the borders of that heart or just make the board into a heart. Just a little fun little tip there. But hopefully you guys have some cheeses to build along with me. The next part of this important demo, and the most important part, I think, is the cheese. It's the foundation of our board. It's kind of what we're all here for, obviously, and the charcuterie as well. But the cheese I like to use as my first step to create kind of the base and the foundation of what I'm going to be building out here. So hopefully you have a mix of different cheeses. I've kind of curated here an assortment of different cheeses to show you guys how to cut and style different types of cheese. So depending on the cheese that you have, you can kind of take any of these ways that I cut the cheese and you can use that way as well on your board as well. But also when I'm selecting cheeses, I like to try to make sure that I have an assortment of different types of cheese. So if that's cow cheese, goat cheese, sheep's cheese, I like to have a variety. And then I also try to have a variety of soft to hard cheese. So I usually have soft cheese, medium, and then all the way up to hard, so that everyone has kind of something to pick from. If you're building this board for yourself, hopefully you just picked your favorite cheeses. And I encourage you to nibble along the way because it's really difficult to create a cheese board and not snack on your pieces of cheese or salami or whatever it is that you're putting on your board while you're doing this. So I encourage you to take some nibbles as you're going. And if you're lucky enough that it's not 12 o'clock where you are, I hope you have a glass of wine, but it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right? So maybe you can have a glass of wine after and enjoy your board with some friends or just yourself. So to start, I want to show you guys a few different ways. So I have started here. I have a aged cheddar. So this is a hard cheese and it's a bit crumbly. So one of the ways I like to use kind of a crumbly or a cheese that seems to kind of crumble very easily is I take the cheese and I put it where I want on the board. So I'm going to kind of put an angle. And when I'm setting all my cheese on the board, I like to use the perimeter as kind of like the base so that I can build inwards. So with this block of cheese, I am actually going to take a knife here, and I'm just going to put my tip of my knife and hold the back of that and twist and get these natural crumbles that start to happen from this aged cheddar. This can totally work as well with like a blue cheese if you have that. I'll scoot my board down a little bit more so you guys can see that. What about there? Is that better? So with this aged cheddar, I'm going to stick my knife into the top of the cheese and twist, and it just starts to create these organic chunks of the cheese here. And I love the way this looks on a board. You can kind of push it together, but I love to start the start of that cheese, that hard cheese, so that people know how to continue to enjoy that cheese. With a hard cheese, it's always a little bit awkward if you just put the block of cheese on your board because people don't really know where to start or how to go about approaching it. So I always like to try to either have the hard cheese cut so that people can just grab it and it's easier for them to enjoy. And then, sorry, I'm seeing a couple people can't see. Make sure that your view on the top right is set to show non-video participants and gallery so that you can see both of the pin views here. And that should work for you. And then, I'm sorry, I saw a couple people couldn't see. Hopefully you're able to see both of my views. If not, you can pin them. And I'm gonna bring this down a little bit so you guys can see that better. Hopefully you see my face and the board view. So at the top right hand of your screen, you should see the option to see a gallery view. I'm gonna pin my overhead board because that's most important. So hopefully you guys can see this a little bit better now. You can also pin both of mine on your own screen, but I'm pinning this for you that hopefully you guys can see the same thing. So I apologize about that. So what I was saying was hard cheeses like this on the board just placed here are really challenging for your guests to be able to get a piece of the board. So I like to try to make sure that I'm making it as easy as possible for my guests to get their next piece of cheese, salami, whatever it is, that it's very accessible on their board. So next I'm going to show you guys one of my other favorite ways to cut. So say you have like a triangle cheese like this, if you can see here. I've done I've already kind of cut the back of this cheese, but it's still that triangle shape. And you can see here that it's just a block of cheese. We want to change that again so it's very easy for people to grab. So if you see, I'm going to place it onto my board and I'm going to create some alternating triangle shapes by using my knife. So if you see here, I have an angle cut. I'm going to continue to alternate and then I'm going to switch the angle to create this triangle shape. It's okay if the cheese breaks as well. I think that's kind of like part of the fun and really creates that natural look, which is very much what I love on my boards. I love a natural, overflowing, very full, inviting setting. So your guests will actually want to eat and enjoy your board. So we have that nice little triangle cut. You can kind of fan those out if you want. I love to be able to having it kind of like point to the center there. So you're really able to see. And this makes it really nice if you wanted to serve with toothpicks on the side, you certainly could. That way your guests could poke and get each of these pieces. You could also serve with the cheese knife on this side so they can easily grab and poke at those. But again, having this pre-cut for your guests will just make it so much easier for them to be able to grab and enjoy their cheese. And again, my goal here is to give you a bunch of different techniques so you can pick your favorite and do whatever you want on your own board. Kind of the beauty of the board. In the end, it's all edible and that's what matters. And of course, as long as it's Instagrammable, right? So choose and pick whatever way that you want. You guys, if you have a block of cheese like this, obviously, again, you're not going to want to put it on here and you're going to see here there's a waxy side of the cheese. You do not want to eat that. So you want to make sure to cut that off here because I'm going to be creating a matchstick view so that you can, or a matchstick so that you can actually create a fun different way. So if you noticed before, the cheese I was using was the same sort of shape. So I want to make sure that I'm using something different to actually kind of like cut that cheese so that you can see that there are different types of cheese and differentiate the ones on your board. So I'm going to take my board here and I'm just going to cut straight across on my cheese. And you start to get these matchsticks, which I love to either fan them out, create little piles or clusters. So it's really easy, again, for your guests to enjoy. And I think that's going to be a theme that you'll hear throughout, that I always am saying, whatever is easiest for your guests to enjoy. So I have pre-cut a few of those and I'm going to fan these out here. Again, this is a fun little matchstick that I've got going on. As you get further up on your board, if you get a thicker piece like this, you can cut that in half to create that matchstick view. So those are 3 ways so far. One of my other favorite ways that you will always notice one of my favorite ways to always style a cheese is to do triangles. So if you have a block of manchego, so I'll show that here. It has also a waxy side. Make sure to remove that. The wax is not edible. Unlike on a brie, the wax is edible, or the wax, the exterior, it's not wax, it's on the outside of your brie. But on a manchego, the outside is wax. So make sure to cut that off. You don't necessarily want to serve that. I do actually like to keep the back of the manchego on there so that your guest has something to grab. I also love the texture that it adds. My boards to me are about creating texture and different dynamics, in different ways that people aren't used to seeing a cheese or a piece of fruit. So that's a little bit different and making it more unique on your board. So you're gonna take your slice of manchego and just a little bit, maybe like 1/4 of an inch, I would say, thickness there, so if you guys can see. And you get these beautiful little triangles. And there's so many different ways that you can style these triangles. So let me just show you here. I've pre-cut a few of these. You can take your triangles and stack them on top of each other and start to create this fun little triangle wave that you've got going on and putting that along the edge of your board. You could take this, so I like to also do, like, it's called a fun zipper, and cross them over one another like this to create kind of like this zigzag zipper shape. And then it sits up nice and perfect on your board. If you see that there, sometimes you kind of have to deviate to make sure it sticks up, but that's a fun little way to do it. I also like to take this size cheese and I cut it in half. So you get a little bit of a thinner triangle here, but you're able to then stack these on top of each other or alternate directions. So I really like this fun kind of back and forth direction down your board. So if you had something in the middle, you could do that there. Or like if I had my honey that I'm gonna put in here, you can use the outside of your honey and start to really kind of like triangle that around your board. This is one of my favorite ways to style because there are so many different ways to do it. And I really love that sharp angle that it creates on your board and really makes your guest's eyes kind of like pop around and look for all the different things. And one way to tell if they're edible, if the rind is edible, is usually that if it's not wax, it's edible. If it's wax, it's not. And if you're ever unsure when you buy your cheese, just ask one of the people that are working in the area. Maybe it's a cheesemonger or your cheese counter. If it's at like Trader Joe's, you can certainly ask one of your guests or one of the people and they'll tell you if it's edible or not. But usually if it's wax, don't eat it. Otherwise it's safe to eat. Unless it's like a bark or sometimes there are leaves that they like kind of like use to age the cheese. Usually want to take that off. And usually it'll say on the instructions on that cheese what to do to remove before you enjoy it. So there are a bunch of different ways to use this style. I love that pointy triangle shape. And I'm gonna go back to this first way that I showed you and kind of created this angle off the side this way and just kind of put that on the edge of my board there. Also, while you're doing this, if you don't like where you placed it, you can pick it up and move it to a different area. It's totally okay to change what you're doing. And maybe you like a different way that I'm cutting the cheeses that you wanna change the way you've done it. Or next time you know in the future, you can take any of these tips or tricks to be able to do that. And one thing too, if you're building a really large board, you can create these clusters throughout the board so that maybe on one side it has it or in the other, it's the same sort of thing. And if there's a different type of triangle cheese, you can cut and lay them and display them in different ways. So it's really giving you a bunch of different ways to create some variety on your board. Also giving your guests a way to know what cheese is. So you could be like, oh, the triangle cheese is a manchego, the matchstick is a Gouda, the crumbled cheese is a cheddar. And it really gives you a really great talking point and allows your guests to understand what's going on your board. So next I wanted to show you guys a few different ways. So if you happen to have a log of goat cheese, which I do not, I went to Trader Joe's to get all my cheeses. I know overseas you guys don't have Trader Joe's, but for us in the US, it's one of the best, most affordable places to get cheese. And they have a really, really great variety. And it is so wonderful and easy to, very affordable cheeses. I'm saying, move your board to the center. Okay, I've moved it to the center. I just also want to make sure that you also have the view of seeing when I cut things so you know how to do that. So next, I've scooted this over. If you happen to have a brie cheese, I have gone ahead just to show you guys here. First of all, the best way for your brie before you cut it, if you choose to cut it, is to refrigerate it and cut it immediately after taking it out of the refrigerator. But the best way to serve a brie is at room temperature. So I like to take out my board about 45 minutes before my guests arrive so that my cheese comes to the right temperature. So you get that really ooey gooey deliciousness that a brie or a camembert is supposed to be. So for this one, I actually love the look of putting kind of one there so guests know how to continue to cut their cheese. You can do this with a round cheese. This cheese I happen to have just happens to have little like kind of scallop edges, but same sort of thing. You could cut it this way, or you could continue to cut the rest of the pie and kind of like lean them on top of one another. It's another great way to do that. I just find that brie sometimes starts to get really ooey gooey when you are going to cut it. So it starts to get very challenging. How long in advance do I prep my board? So that's a great question. It depends. So if I'm hosting and I want to make sure I give myself enough time, I will make my board in the morning and store it in the refrigerator. I saran wrap it and keep it ready. I just omit putting crackers on the board because crackers tend to get a little bit soggy. So you can certainly make it maybe the night before, the morning of, and then just take it out 45 minutes before your guests arrive, and it'll come to room temperature so that it's ready for you to enjoy. Next, I wanted to show you guys, I'm sorry, we were talking about goat cheese. My goat cheese log I didn't actually have, but I would encourage you to, one, leave it in the refrigerator as long as possible before cutting it. And then what you can do is take your log of cheese. So I'm gonna actually show you, I have mozzarella here that I'm just gonna show you how I like to cut it. So this is a pre-sliced mozzarella, which is wonderful. You can slice and create the kind of like disc shapes with your goat cheese log. A hack that I love to use is actually using floss to cut the cheese. So you pull it tight, press down on the end, and you can create these disc type shapes with your goat cheese, similar to the mozzarella that I have here. And then you can fan them out on one another. So if you can see, you can create this fan shape. You can put it on the edge of your board. If you had tomatoes right now, and this is mozzarella, we could do every other one with tomatoes and mozzarella to create kind of like, it's like a candy cane striped board. But creating that alternating view there. It's just a fun, different way to do that. And then also I have included I have a blue cheese here, but my board is starting to fill up. So I don't think I'm gonna put another blue cheese on my board, but I'm just gonna show you guys here. Similar type of thing. So depending on the number of guests, I would probably take this and again, start to create that crumble. This blue cheese is already crumbling a ton because as blue cheese does, it loves to crumble. So I would crumble that and make it ready for guests to be able to enjoy that way. And then one last thing, when I am serving cheese, if it's the full meal, I like to make sure there are about 3 to 4 ounces of cheese on the board per person to be able to enjoy. And then with meat, about 1 to 2 ounces per person. Give or take, like if you know you have, like my husband loves to eat a bunch of food, I increase that a little bit. I go to about 5 to 6 ounces because I know he's gonna take up the rest of that and enjoy that. But that's a really great gauge to kind of use when you're at the store, you're like, how much cheese do I get? That's a good way to kind of like take a look at your cheeses and see how many ounces that you have and divide that by the number of guests for 3 to 4 ounces per guest. So now you kind of have the foundation of your board. Is the soft cheese something that you cut or do you keep separate? Just to kind of like point that out real quick. I saw that question come in. You can certainly serve it on your board. Just make sure that you provide the appropriate knife to go with it. So if you wanted to include your log of goat cheese, but you didn't want to have it cut out into those circle discs, you could just leave that on your board. I would place a couple edible flowers on top of it. So my signature, if you guys follow me, know that I always use fresh herbs and edible flowers on my board. It's one of my favorite things to do. And I just think it creates such a beautiful texture and dynamic. You could certainly prop that along your goat cheese and maybe do a couple on the end just to display. But my thing is with soft cheeses, certainly put them on your board and just make sure that you provide your guests with a knife. Some of my favorite cheeses, I love Gouda. I love the crystallization of the salt rind, the salt that's within the Gouda, and I also love a Manchego. Cypress Groves also has a wonderful hard goat cheese that I love and highly recommend if you get a chance to take a look at it. So next I'm going to show you guys kind of like the next step I do here. And from here, we kind of have our core foundation. We've built around the parameters of the board. And I then like to add my jams or honey to my board so your guests can be able to dip and enjoy and create from different palettes. So one of my favorite parts about a cheese board is that you're giving people the ability to try out different pairings, different textures, different flavors, and they can kind of try it on their own. You can obviously say, oh, my favorite bite is with Gouda and fig jam and apricot, but it really encourages your guests to be able to try and use out these things on their own. My favorites are fig jam, and I really love honey because I think both of those are very mild and allow you to kind of try out those different flavors with all the different cheeses that you have on your board. So if once you have that, I like to put them into ramekins unless your honey jar is this kind of like tiny little shape here. I think it's perfect. You can provide little spoons with your items so guests can do it, or knives on this side. So it's very specific. And when I'm setting out my board, I'm always setting it out with the appropriate knives that go with it or the appropriate utensils, maybe with some serving plates. If you'd like guests to kind of put that on their plate and then take and enjoy. If it's you can do whatever you want and enjoy what your favorite cheeses in your favorite way, whatever you want with your glass of wine, right? Okay, so next I like to use the bigger items on our board, and that I love to use next are grapes. Grapes are an amazing way to really fill up your board, especially if you're building for a large group of people. It's a great way to fill in the board so you don't maybe have to use as much cheese, because cheese can be very expensive. So it can be a little bit of a challenge. You don't want to be like break the bank when spending all this money on all your different cheeses. So actually grapes and crackers are two of my favorite ways to do that. So I like to kind of like create balance of color when I'm building on my board. And I do that by kind of like creating one of another opposite of each other. So I'm going to start here by taking a cluster of grapes and place this on the corner of the board here. And I love to kind of see the different kind of like organic ways the grapes fall. A great way, so you'll kind of see here, there's a little bit of a missing pocket that's going on. I will take a cluster of like two grapes here, and I'll fill that in, and no one knows. And it just makes your grapes feel nice, look nice and full, and really, really wonderful there. So I love to do that. I also think grapes create a nice pop of color. I'm getting really lucky with my clusters of grapes here. They're very nicely put together, but I would take a couple of grapes in here and just place them in here, make it look really full. So again, I'm kind of balancing my color here. It doesn't have to be exactly symmetrical. I just think it's nice flow throughout your board. So you can kind of see here, we're creating some shape, excuse me, especially with the manchego on the edges. The grapes are kind of pointing in this direction. I love that flow, and I love to look throughout the board and see kind of like where else there could be some balance there. So next I wanted to show you guys a couple ways to style, if you wanted to do like a kiwi or a clementine, if you had something like that on your board or in your ingredients. I specifically have done kiwis because I really want to be able to display and show you guys this beautiful way to showcase your kiwis. I will say it's definitely more for decoration than it is for eating, but you never know. I have guests all the time who love kiwis. They'll pick it up, take one of the spoons and scoop out the insides. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my kiwi and a knife here, and I'm just going to start to create some zigzag shapes back and forth, kind of pointing that down at an angle here, but back and forth throughout my board, if you can see there. So just for the sake of time, I have finished cutting all the way around, and you have your kiwi and you can pop open and you get this beautiful star shape. This works with citrus, basically anything that's like a harder fruit. I haven't tried it with an apple. I imagine that to be very challenging, but a piece of citrus like a clementine or a tangerine or even an orange, you could do this, but my favorite is to do it with kiwi because I love the inside of that to create that look. So again, with my colors, I already have the two greens on the side. I'm going to pop these up kind of just against my cheese there to kind of create that balance of the greens throughout my board. So let me show you guys again here. I have my kiwi that was pre-cut, and I'm going to take my knife and alternate directions back and forth, kind of at an angle. This guy's a little bit juicy, so he's dripping on my board, but that's okay. Back and forth here, all the way until it connects to the other side. And if it doesn't exactly connect, it's okay. Like you can pull it apart, or you can go back and use your knife and kind of like point through those different areas. So see here, I'm a little off, but it should still work. So I cut it all the way around and I can just pull it apart. There we go. And you get this beautiful star shape. This is one of my favorite ways to create some dynamic and shape to the board. And I think it's a really nice really nice way to display a kiwi. I think it's just so beautiful. And if you didn't like that way, you could obviously just take your kiwi and slice it into some circles. And what I like to do here, and this is obviously like for a pop of color, you could take off the rinds too if you wanted to. Like if you were doing a fruit board, you could certainly take that off. But if you take 2 pieces of this and you get this here, I would use that to like tuck into a corner and get another pop of green if I was really looking for some color, and also a great thing for people to be able to enjoy. So that's one way to do a kiwi there. I also wanted to show you guys, so now I'm not going to be putting all these on my board, but I want to give you guys, again, these tools that you need to create your own board at home and be able to create a beautiful, beautiful board of your own, but unique to you and what you love and what you actually enjoy, and what you find beautiful. So next I wanted to show you guys another way, so to have a pear on your board. Obviously you could put the pear and create some fan slices, but one of my favorite ways to do a pear is to create kind of this stacked look. I actually cut this a little bit earlier, so it's a little bit browning, but that's okay. It creates this little different, just a different dynamic, a different way. And one of my favorite things to do is to give people something that they always see, but in a different way. So it makes it unique, and your guests are like really in awe and stunned by the beauty of the different things that you've got going on here. So here is your pear. What I've done is taken a pear. I'm going to use a larger knife here to show you guys and just cut down sideways. I know this is kind of like not normally how you would see it, but then you get this actually kind of like the perfect cracker. And you can totally put your cheese right on that. You could put a little bit of honey, and you've got like a fruit cracker, right? And also the further you go, the inside of a pear and also an apple, you get these beautiful star shape because of the seeds that are in the inside. Obviously people don't have to eat the seeds, but look at that cool shape that's in there. Like, I don't necessarily think that I would have ever seen or noticed this inside of an apple or a pear before, but because you cut it a little bit differently, you're giving people that view and that angle. So you could also take your pears and slice them that way if you, or place them that way if you wanted to throughout your board. And I'm going to show you guys a little bit later how I like to fan, like I'm going to fan some apples on my board, and I'll show you guys how to do that. One of the next things I like to show you guys, because I think it's just so fun, and this would be a great moment to put it on your board, is to create an apple heart. So if you take an apple from the grocery store and you use your hand like this to kind of create, that's how you want to cut it. So you're going to take that and slice right down, and then take your apple and flip it upside down, and with a really sharp knife and as thin as possible. It starts to get a little bit challenging, but make sure you have a great thin knife. I start in the center, and I start to work outwards from each side to create really thin slices here. So you can see I keep going. I'm going to go all the way to the edge and show you guys how I've already cut it and already sliced it. That is sliced all the way around. I like to use my fingers then to create a heart. So you can really kind of shift and pull and change until you start to get a shape of a heart. And this is so fun for like an anniversary, Valentine's Day, any sort of reason to put a heart on your board. So if you guys can see that there, I really just pushed and I kind of like arranged these out a little bit to create that heart shape, and you can place it right on your board. Apples are a wonderful pairing with cheese, I think, and place that throughout your board. And I think it's just so cute. And for St. Patrick's Day, if you followed me, you probably already saw, I took 3 green apples and I arranged them into a shamrock, which is such a cute little different way to display those. And I think it's fun also if you have kids, they love that cute little apple. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys saw how to do that. Again, you're taking your apple, starting from the middle and slicing outward. So just to kind of show you guys in case I was off screen before, you slice down the middle and slice outward as thin as possible on both directions. And then you'll use your fingers to start to shift and pull and create that apple shape. I actually was thinking for Mother's Day, this would be so cute for a brunch board to put that on there, and a really great, cute way to show that somebody you love them, right? Okay, so we've got a really great foundation going on here. Also, if you couldn't see or didn't see, check my Instagram. I've got lots of tutorials and videos there. If there's anything that you have questions about, let me know. Happy to answer them. And if I don't get to your questions here, then you can totally do it. A great question I just saw come in: how do you prevent the fruit from browning? That is a wonderful question, especially with apples. I actually like to use orange juice. So there's obviously the tip that people say that you can use lemons, lemon juice to kind of like rub on the outside of your fruit. Orange juice is a great way to do it without creating that bitter, really like sour taste. And it really is actually delicious. So that's one little tip. So next on my board, I like to do crackers. So this is a little bit of a controversial topic to me, I think. Crackers, there's room for those on the side in my book. I love to serve them on the side because I love to make sure my board is full of all the supplies and ingredients that I have. And I just get so excited about all the other things. Of course, it's fun to display crackers. And like I had said before, it's a great way to fill up your board. So use crackers to do that. But if you were going to be making this board ahead of time, do not put your crackers on the board. If you're going to put your cracker or the board that you make in the refrigerator, don't put your crackers on there. They will be soggy. You're going to be bummed. You're going to have to replace them. And it's just going to be a world of disappointment. So you can serve them on the side. I always love to have extras on the side. Crackers tend to be one of the first things that go along with the cheese. And having them on the side is really easy to refill with. But I'm going to show you guys too, for the sake of the demo, how I would display crackers on my board. And I also have displayed those on my Instagram if you want to check that out, so that people can see it. So I like to create these little stacks and kind of like fans of the crackers. So if you see there, I create a little corner cracker. And again, I really love the balance and how to take creating that. I don't want to say it's symmetrical because it's not at all symmetrical, but it's really creating that eye and the balance of color throughout your screen. So, or throughout your board, I'm sorry. And it really just gives your guests something to look at and really creates a different texture, but throughout the board. So honestly, whatever you do is going to be beautiful. But I think that creating the different dynamic throughout your board just really creates that dimension. So I'm going to place another little fan in the corner here. You could also just stack them up. I've used these crackers that have fig in them and they're delicious and wonderful. And I also love just like a Cars cracker or a plain simple cracker or a baguette. So kind of choose whatever cracker you want based on what you enjoy and try to have an assortment so that there's something for every guest. So you could also do that. That's another way to kind of like stack and tuck onto your board. So again, crackers, I love to do on the side. So I'm not going to put a ton on here because I don't want it to use up all of my prime real estate with all the wonderful food that we're going to be filling this in with. And next on my list of things that I like to put on is the charcuterie. So technically your cheese and charcuterie board is not a charcuterie board unless it has meat. That is what charcuterie is. So there's a lot of controversy out there. People say that they make a candy charcuterie board. Technically it's not a charcuterie board, but you can call it whatever you want. People just might get a little upset with you. So for the charcuterie piece, I'm gonna again show you guys a few different ways to style the different options. So I have a salami here and I also have prosciutto that I'm gonna show you a couple different ways. To start, my favorite way, and I think the most inviting and easy for guests to access, is by taking a piece of salami, folding it in half, and then folding it in half again, and you get this little layer here. So if I take a bunch of those together, it starts to create this cluster type shape. I'll fold that again so you guys can see that again, but really creating this nice flow and texture and really easy to kind of tuck in between two different things. So at this point, if you're looking down on your board, you have a lot of bigger core items. From here, I like to use these bigger core items to kind of tuck things and layer things within to create kind of like that base and that foundation. So again, for the salami that I did here, I'm going to take this flat piece here, fold it in half once and fold it in half again. And if you continue to do that over and over, you get these beautiful clusters. So I kind of pre-made those so you could see. So easy and so beautiful. And I'm going to just kind of tuck those into different areas of my board. I think this is such a great way for guests to be able to grab one piece at a time and really making it inviting for them. I also wanted to show you guys how to do a salami rose, because I know that that is a very trendy thing that people have probably seen out in the world or the Instagram world. It's one of my favorite things to use for skewers. I think it's such a fun, cute, easy way to have a little bit of a salami flour. But my only bone to pick with the salami flour, if you have it on your board, is that people tend to take the entire flour, and that can be a lot of slices of salami. So I try to make them smaller, so that if your guests do take one or two of those flours, they're only getting like 3 slices at a time, maybe 4, depending on how much you want to have on your board. I just think it's really challenging because people take the whole thing. So that's my beef with it. So I tend to be very cautious when I put these on my board, but I want to show you guys so that you know how to do it and can create your own. So I take the salami here and I lie them on top of each other. You guys can see, hopefully. I'm going to scoot my board up just a smidge so that you guys can see, and I'll scoot it back down. But you'll see the 3 pieces of salami. There's a little bit of overlap over one of another, and you start to just fold them in half. So you'll see again, they're still kind of crossed over one another. Also, if you're weirded out by salami, wear gloves. It's up to your own preference. My hands are clean. I'm in my own home. So just do whatever you feel comfortable with, but you can certainly wash your hands after doing this because salami likes to get nice and greasy. So you have the 3 here, and then I take this corner and I twist and I tuck and I start to roll. And I roll along the edge here. And if you can see, I'm rolling and tucking. I'm gonna lift it up so you guys can see this way, rolling and tucking, and then you flip it over and you've got this little flower. You could put a toothpick in the sides of that and have that just on your board that way if you wanted to. You could also kind of open it up a little bit and add that in there so it creates a little bit more of like an organic look on your board. I'll show you guys again so that in case you didn't miss that. So we've got 1, 2, 3 here on top of each other. You're going to fold those over. Again, tucking and rolling from that corner side. So you're tucking and rolling, creating this adorable little flower. And it's spring, so the flowers are blooming. So spring flowers, spring roses, salami roses are perfect for a spring board, or even serving on their own. So if you've checked out my Instagram, I love to use these, and I put like a ball of mozzarella on each side, a piece of basil, and then I put it on a skewer. And you have these adorable little rose skewers that you can enjoy with your friends. Maybe you're going to a bridal shower or it's an anniversary. You could totally serve those, and it's just such a fun, cute way to do that. So I'm going to tuck that in there and fill in a couple other spots on my board. I really like to create pockets throughout your board so that wherever your guests are, they can get access to your cheese. So I'm going to continue to do this look here. It's my favorite. Again, I think it's not as wasteful. I think it's great for people to be able to grab and get the pieces that they want. So again, I'm taking this, folding it in half and in half again. And you get these wonderful little salami tulips, rivers, whatever you want to call it. Then you've got that there. So let's tuck it in here. Again, I'm creating some balance. So I did these kind of flowers across from another, the salami over here. I'm probably going to do one tucked in here just because I want to make sure that there's enough for everyone to be able to enjoy. Oh, you could totally put an olive in the middle of your flower. That would be so pretty. Okay, so I'm going to do this up here so you guys can hopefully see. I apologize if it looks like I'm really gripping onto this. So again, you take it and you fold it in half once and you pinch and curl, pinch and curl, and you can see upside down. I'll twist it this way, you can see. And it's important to have those pieces tucked in with one another because that's what's holding that together. So again, you could put toothpicks on through this so that you could set it out and it would stay, or you could kind of just let it organically come apart here. So that was that float rose again, and I'll show you guys again that fold in half once, and this way. And you have this beautiful view. You could certainly take your salami and create like a river down the middle and just align and stack them all together. And that would be so fun. Just to give people so much salami to pick from, right? How's everyone doing out there? How are your boards come along? Are you building a board with me, or are you just kind of taking it all in so that you know all the tips and tricks to build a board for your next barbecue or get together or gathering? What are you guys doing? You're watching. Great. I'm sorry if I'm making you hungry. Taking it all in. Great. I love that you guys are just watching because I really think that then you can go home and then you can do which ones you like best. And like you can create what your favorite styles are and really kind of create your own personal board. I think that's so fun. Okay, so we're starting to get to really kind of the wrap of the core of your board. From here, there's a lot of open spaces. So I want to make sure I'm filling in those areas, and I love to do that by using fresh fruit, dried fruit, and nuts. So with that, also, if you're building along with me, I apologize, they're going kind of fast, but we are time limit. So I just want to make sure I'm able to get all of this in for you, and then hopefully you can finish after and as we go. But I just want to make sure that you guys are getting and able to see everything that I am doing. And if you missed something, again, if you check out my Instagram, I usually have tutorials for all of this. And I think it would be really wonderful just if you're able to check that out, then you can follow along and get all the tips and tricks there as well. So next, I'm going to use some blackberries and some blueberries. One of my favorite things to do is actually create layers of texture with the same colors. So if I have my blackberries here, I'm going to start to just kind of like pile in. So we've got no black on our board. We have no blue. We have nothing in here. So I'm going to start to create some piles and clusters and see how that blackberry kind of just fell how it fell. I actually love that. I think it is so wonderful. I think it creates that natural overflowing look, and that's my favorite way to do it. So I'm going to just start to do that and pile those in different kind of like clusters throughout, two here or there. It doesn't necessarily matter, but again, I'm using those my balance. So see how those are kind of an out from one another. I take that and look out from outwards. You could certainly use radishes for color. I love to put brie on radishes with a little bit of sea salt. It's kind of like butter, but I love brie even more than butter, which I know is a dangerous statement, but also very, very delicious. And you can certainly add radishes if you'd like. What I would do for a radish, and I'm actually going to show you guys how to cut strawberries a few different ways, and you can use that technique for a radish as well. So if you've seen here, I've kind of created this like base and add of color. Now I'm going to take my blueberries and layer them on top of one another to create a different dynamic that you can look up and down throughout. So you can kind of like see the different areas of your board. And if you see there, it's probably a little bit hard to see with the black, but I'll share a picture of this after. If you go look at my other boards, you'll see if you look really closely, there's a lot of texture that's added by layering different colors on top of one another. You could also add in pops of color. So say you have your blackberries, you could sprinkle pomegranate seeds over your blackberries, really get a fun pop of color added to your board. It's not pomegranate season, so it starts to become challenging. I really love to make sure when I'm building my boards, I'm using things that are in season. Obviously not everything on my board is in season, but as best as possible using what's in season. So citrus season is just kind of ended, which is so sad, but spring has a lot of wonderful fresh vegetables and fruits that I try to incorporate when I'm building boards at home. But for the sake of the demo and getting you guys to be able to see a bunch of different things, you have that option. Okay, so from here, so I wanted to show you guys with strawberries a couple different ways to display. I'm gonna got my cutting board here and scoot this up so you guys can see again. Okay, so you have your strawberries. You could certainly just put them as is. Obviously, make sure they're washed. I like to leave the tops of the strawberries on because I think it creates a nice texture. Texture might be one of my favorite words I think I've used throughout this presentation probably 100 times, right? So if I wanted to just put a couple strawberries in there to create some color, you can totally do that and it starts to fill in. Raspberries with the strawberries would be really beautiful and a really fun way to add some texture. But I want to show you guys also how to cut strawberry a few different ways. So I'm going to put them on this board so that you could see here, and then I'll show you each way to cut that so that you are able to kind of do whichever you choose. My favorite way is to create this fan look. So I'll bring it up to the screen and you kind of create this fan, and that's not just by slicing from one side to the out and then using your fingers to press that outward. I really just love the way that that looks. And then I'll prop that up and kind of put that on. I like to use this as like kind of like my topper and adding to the bottom layer. You put everything in there and then this is the next layer that you're building to build the dimension on your board. So just really quickly, I'll show you on this one what I did. You take your strawberry, you start on the outside and you slice out all the way in. And then you can use your fingers to fan it out. And it's just such a fun little way to add some texture. Again, texture, it's all I say, right? But that's really important to me, and I really love creating layers. So after I place all these things, I use things like strawberries to add those different layers on top of that so that when you take something off, you're just uncovering the next beautiful thing that you get to enjoy and eat. And so for radishes, I don't think that would work that way, but you could certainly just take your strawberry or your radish strawberry, whatever one you choose, and cut it in half and start to kind of like twist them on top of each other this way and prop them on your board, or you could face them outward like this. really giving people something different than you normally would potentially see. One of my other favorite ways is if you take a strawberry and you start from the end and you cut it down inward, you start to create kind of this like disc shape. So if you see here, we get this like little circle and disc of the strawberries. And you could take a couple of those and fan those on the corner. You could add them throughout your space on your board, just for a nice pop of color. And again, giving people something different, or something they're used to seeing every single day in a certain way, in a little bit of a different way, which also points me back, I forgot to mention this before, with blackberries. I actually love cutting a blackberry in half. Let me do that for you really quickly. Because the inside of a blackberry isn't something that you would necessarily see. If you look inside, it's actually really beautiful. It's something so different, and you can display that on your board so that people are like, what is that? And I'm like, that's actually just a blackberry, and I cut it in half. And it's so fun. It creates that different texture, the different dynamic. It gives your eye something else to look at. I'm gonna do a different one here so you can see again. So pretty. I mean, it's not the most gorgeous thing you've probably ever seen, but it's really something unique. And I think that that is a great way, and really how I've been able to differentiate a lot of the boards I create is creating things a little bit differently. You could also do that to a blackberry. You could do that to a raspberry. Raspberries might get a little bit more smushed, but you still have that option. Okay, so we are almost full here. You can see there's just a few pockets left on my board, and I really use this as an opportunity to add in some nuts and dried fruit. I love dried apricot. It's one of my favorite things to put on a board. I truly think the flavor goes with everything. And it's a nice little substitute for a cracker. So maybe you have a gluten-free friend. This would be a great option to make sure you have extra on this side for your friend. Also, those pear circles that we did earlier would also be great for your gluten-free friend who can't have crackers. This would be a great vehicle to get that cheese into your mouth, and you could certainly do that for your guests. So what I'm gonna do is take these clusters. I like to do probably like 3 or 4 of them at a time, sometimes 2, depending on how much space, and tucking them into these last little open spots that we've got on our board. So you'll see here, there's a couple going on over here. I like to kind of like either fan them out or lay them parallel, which I did both of those there that you can see. And I get a little pop of orange. Someone said yes. And also, like, if I had done the kiwi with that kiwi cut with an orange, that would add a nice little pop of orange here and do the similar type of thing that we've got going on. And because my Gouda is orange, it kind of creates that dynamic throughout. So it's a really fun way. I also will lift up and tuck underneath things because, again, you're uncovering and you're finding more every single time someone takes a bite of your cheese board. And that is one of my favorite parts. So I'm just going to tuck it over here, filling in really any last really big gaps that I see, because this last part is the nuts I'm going to use. These are Marcona almonds. They are my absolute favorite, and I get to use those, as well as candied pecans are my favorites. So I'm just going to find some last little holes here and just kind of drizzle those in where I can find them. Just handfuls. It does not have to be exactly where you put it. If they fall in other places, that's totally okay. You can certainly add other things here, like some chocolate. I love dark chocolate with some Gouda. That is one of my favorite things. You could also add some olives. You could add some cornichon. Basically, this is an opportunity to add any sort of like pickled or dried or nut type moments, because it's kind of like the touch, the last little filler. They tend to be a little bit smaller, and they can fill in all the little holes. So if you see, we've got a really full board here. My last and final step that I'm just going to quickly say so we have some time for some questions. Again, if we don't get to all the questions that you guys have, please, please, please message me. I am more than happy to answer any of your questions and help you guys be able to create a beautiful board at home. My last step is using fresh herbs and edible flowers. So pansies and violas are my absolute favorite thing to add to a board. They're just so cute. They remind me of Alice in Wonderland with little faces, and I think they're just such a little fun dynamic. Would you add the nuts right before serving? Yes, another thing that kind of gets a little bit mushy in the refrigerator and can be a bit challenging there, but I'm just going to show you guys for the sake of time. I like to kind of like layer these in here and twist around things. So that one didn't twist as well as I'd like, but I look with the natural flow of the sage here and use that to kind of tuck in there. And then I would place like an edible flower right at the base of that. So it kind of looks like what you would see in nature. I also like to like layer different textures. So say I have sage, you could do sage and rosemary on top of one another, or you could do fresh lavender. This rosemary that I got happened to be budding. So there are actually flowers on my rosemary, which I absolutely love. So just another way to really elevate your board, give your guests something really beautiful. I will say sometimes that the edible flowers and the herb kind of deter people away from starting on your board. If you want to, you can just dive in yourself and show people that it's okay to still eat, even though they could be disrupting how beautiful your board is, or you could take it off. But I love it. I think it adds just like a nice little tied together, really beautiful pop of color and beautiful scent. The smell of sage and rosemary on your board is just so wonderful. You could certainly eat these herbs if you wanted to. It's up to you. I don't personally like to eat them, but it's totally up to your own preference. One thing too I like to do with these leaves, and like for example for my salami flower, if I just take one of the leaves and tuck it there, it kind of looks like a real rosebud, right? It's got maybe like 2 flowers there, and it really creates that nice beautiful view. And it's cute because it's kind of surrounded by the corner of my board. How much would this cost to make? That's a really good question. I think it depends on where you were to grocery shop. So I always look at like Trader Joe's is very affordable. I apologize, I don't know what options are overseas. I'm sure your options for cheese and meats are so much better than they are in the US. But this board probably would cost around, I would say, $65 to $70. Again, you could totally fill in with more crackers and eliminated cheese. You could only do a couple pieces of salami or omit salami altogether, so that you can really kind of take up the whatever best fits your budget. Costco is also a great place for cheese and meats. You just get a lot more for your money, of course, but just maybe plan some happy hours back to back to back, or if you're planning a larger get together, it's a great option to have a bigger bulk amount of cheese. Yeah. Do you have a favorite cheese knife? Oh, that's a great question. Where did it go? I had it here. One of my favorite cheese knives, oh, here it is from Wusthof. They actually have these holes down the middle, which helps the cheese from getting stuck to your board. So Wusthof is the name of it. They've got a few different options. It's great because it's got a really sharp edge, so you can create that crumbled look, but then when you slice your cheeses, it doesn't get stuck to it. So that's also really nice that way. Let me see if I can pull up these Q&As and see if I can help answer some of these questions. Oh, Lara is back as well, so she can help.
This is so beautiful. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
It looks amazing. I think we all can agree that this is stunning.
I have to go a little closer so you can see.
Yes. Oh, so pretty. Oh, I'm so hungry. Okay, I have a couple of questions for you. I know you've been answering questions since the beginning, so that was very helpful throughout the whole presentation. I have a couple for you. Let's see. It's a funny one, and I had this question too. How do guests pick up the crumbled cheese from the board?
So you could certainly serve some toothpicks alongside of your board. You could also use a cheese knife that, like if you get a cheese set, so like serving cheese knife, there's ones that have like a point to it, and you could use that to poke it and grab it and put it on your plate. You could also use your fingers. I hate to say it, but if it's your guests and everyone's washed their hands beforehand, using your fingers, I think is totally okay for this Grace style. If you're at like a wedding and they have a Grace table, make sure you find some tongs. Those are also a great option too. Amazon has these really adorable like bamboo tongs too that you can serve, and that's a great way to grab, and they're disposable. They're also reusable, which is also really great. Or you can even serve it like mini forks if you had them. So that it's nice for your guests to be able to do it, because that's a great question. Sometimes people feel like hesitant to grab it because there's not a way to grab it without using their hands.
Those are great suggestions. I love the font. Do you have a book available? Everybody
my dream is to have a book. Awesome. The goal is to have a book. Hopefully in the next year or two, I have one. But thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. One way to help get publishers to want to buy my book or buy a book or have me do is following me and engaging on Instagram. Kind of sounds silly, but them seeing the support there really would allow them to want to back something like that. So thank you for asking that.
Absolutely. I follow her already. There is the link on the chat. So go ahead and follow her, and the link for her website too. I have a couple more. Where do you get edible flowers or lemon leaves?
That is a great question. So in the US is unfortunately going to be the only place I can add some advice here. Gourmet Sweet Botanicals is a company that I love to use, and they actually ship across the country, excuse me, they ship across the country. They have an assortment of different options, and they make sure they grow them food safe, so without pesticides, which is a really important piece. You could also grow your pansies and violas at home if you wanted to. Or if you didn't have that option to do either of those things, you could certainly buy some flowers from the grocery store. I just really make sure to not poke it into your food because there usually are pesticides. So just using that just as more of a display, and make sure you tell your guests not to eat it. But I think growing is the best option if you can. If not, Gourmet Sweet Botanicals is a great option. I will say that their shipping can be a little pricey, so it's definitely worth it for an event. But in the end, if you run out, if you don't use them all, creating ice cubes with the edible flowers in them is a great way to use it up, and you don't feel like you've wasted money. And then you can pop a few ice cubes in your next cocktail that have edible flowers in them, and it really just elevates that experience for you and your guests.
All right. And I have the last question before we wrap it up. What would you do with prosciutto on a plate? We've seen you use
prosciutto. Yes. I have prosciutto here. Let me quickly show you some of my favorite ways to do it. So prosciutto, I think sometimes can be very challenging to work with. So I encourage you to leave it in the refrigerator as long as possible before you're going to use it. But I have my piece here. You're going to take off the piece of plastic. See, it's already falling apart. Let's see what I can actually do with my prosciutto. Okay, I'll show with this half over here. I accidentally let it out too long. So if I have my piece here, you can fold it in half. And you can actually, if you like fold it back and forth like this, back and forth, and you flip it over, you get this kind of like flow here that creates like a fanned look that you can kind of display throughout your board and tuck it into different pieces. Let me grab one more piece and show you how you can also kind of make a flower type shape as well with prosciutto versus salami. And this type of flower is more of my favorite way to do it because if someone takes the whole prosciutto, that's kind of expected. People kind of take the whole piece. So this is a great way to be able to still make that flower, but not lose like 6 slices of salami. So okay, this is just falling apart on me here. Okay, see if I can get this to work with me. Okay, so if you take this and you're going to tuck and twist and curl, you get a little bit of a salami flower, and you can place that throughout your board. And it's another beautiful way to display salami or prosciutto. Sorry, those are 2 ways that you can do that.
Those are awesome. I never thought that you could make a prosciutto flower, but it looks fantastic.
Yes. Who would have thought there were so many flowers on your cheese board and you didn't even know?
That's right. Well, I have my board ready because I will be doing all of this tomorrow. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you so much, Alora. It was an amazing experience. I am so happy. I've learned so many techniques, and I think all of us are going to be stepping up our game. And
thank you guys so much for joining. And if you make a board of your own, please message me with them. I'd love to see what you guys create. Just a reminder, if your profile is private, you have to send it to me in a message because I won't be able to see if you tag me. But if your account is public, I can see. But I'd love to see the boards that you guys create.
Yes, please share them with all of us. As always, you'll be able to see the recording of this event in a few days on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/meetup. Thanks again, all of you, for joining us, and have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.